NSTIC is trying to address three key problems when it comes to trust in cyberspace. The first is that passwords as a technology are fundamentally broken, and we need to try and get the country to use something that's more secure. Whether it's the fact that they are easily cracked by hackers and fraudsters and other bad guys 7 different ways with very little effort, or the fact that all of us are now being asked to try and manage 25 or 30 different passwords that are growing increasingly more complex and thus unusable. It's clear that passwords have run their cycle. Somebody let me know a couple weeks ago they've actually been around for 50 years now, and it's time for most applications to try and get us to something that has a little bit more trust. The second challenge we're trying to address is that 18 years after the old New Yorker cartoon was published where the dog says to his friend the dog, the great thing about the internet is nobody knows you're a dog, that's still the case today. And while there are plenty of applications and things we do online where it's okay to be a dog, anonymity and pseudonymity are not only acceptable but quite desirable, and in fact are I would say defining characteristics of the internet. There are also a lot of transactions that we'd like to be able to engage in online that we can't because they're deemed too risky, because there's no way that if we want to actually assert with any real validity that we are who we say we are, there's just not a great way for us to assert it, and there's no great way for a relying party on the other end to actually know that this is the case or not. The third topic we're trying to tackle with regard to cyberspace identity and trust is privacy. The amount of information that is being collected and sold and swapped and traded about Americans online is growing significantly each year as more and more information is both captured and then used in all sorts of different applications. There are some very legitimate uses of this application, but there's also concern that things are getting out of control, that the individuals don't have the ability to actually make decisions about their data anymore and who gets to use it for what purpose. And we're very interested with National Strategy and Trusted Identities in Cyberspace and working collaboratively with private sector stakeholders to craft solutions that will give individuals more control over their personal information and more choice over how it's used and when it's shared. NSTIC is a very bold and audacious strategy. It really lays out a vision of what the government thinks the future should look like in terms of how all Americans are able to authenticate online. A key tenet of NSTIC is that the private sector has to be in the lead. It's been very clear from the start that the folks behind drafting the NSTIC have made clear they don't think government has all the answers, and they don't want this to be a government-run identity system. This is something the private sector ultimately needs to lead the implementation of. So with that, we've been very focused on the establishment of a steering group, something that's actually been prescribed in the actual strategy. It would bring together different stakeholders from across the private sector and public sectors in order to start working together on crafting standards for interoperability, on crafting policies and operating rules that actually govern how these different technologies are used and what happens in different circumstances with different types of transactions, as well as an accreditation process for different identity providers to become certified. So we've been very heavily focused in this year, our startup year, of NSTIC on working in partnership with the private sector to figure out the best way forward to help catalyze the formation of the steering group, and we believe we're on pace to get it set up by early next year.